Hi everyone, trust you all are doing well. Welcome to our next lesson, and in this lesson we're going to be discussing numbers and operators. Right, let's get straight into it. So the first thing that I've done is in our JavaScript file, I just created a new file called O2, numbers and operators, and I obviously link that file in our HTML with a defer method to JS O2 numbers and operators. Right, so now I'm just going to open that file. But before I did that, I'm just going to open with live server. So I got my Firefox browser open right here, and I have our numbers and operators file open. And obviously it's open in our browser. All right. Now in programming, even the humble decimal number system that we all know so well are more complicated than you think. We use different terms to describe different types of decimal numbers in JavaScript or in programming in general. So we have the first one is called integers. This we all know. And we call them, let me just do this, whole numbers. Right? They can be positive or negative. So -5, let me just make an example, -6, and this, or it can be positive. So +5, I'll just use the other 111 and 201. So this is positive whole numbers and negative whole numbers. All right. The next one that we have is we got floating point numbers. All right. So the next one is called floating point. Right. In short, we call them floats. All right. So just remember, it's interchangeable. Floating point numbers means floats, and floats mean float pointing numbers. Okay. So these numbers are it's actually decimal numbers. 12.5, like we said, are all decimal numbers. The next one is, let's say, 56.4532. Right? So we got point decimal numbers. It's called floats. Now, the next one that we have is called doubles. You will quite hear this a lot as well. So in doubles. Doubles, basically, they are specific type of floating point numbers. So it's basically a branch of floating point numbers that have a greater precision than the standard floating point numbers, meaning they are more accurate to a greater number of decimals. All right. So let's quickly get into an example. So of our number system, basically, not of doubles, of the whole number system. Right, so let my int, okay, so let my integer equals to, let's say, 10, all right, and let my float equal to, let's say, a price of 6.95 or 3. Let's say this came out of the calculator, just as an example. All right, so let's see if we call that into our browser. Let's see if it's initialized, if it's actually working. All right, so we see in our browser we got the 10 there that we're looking for, and my float. All right, so it returns the value. Now we want to know what data type these two declarations are. We want to know what my integer, what type of data is it, and we want to know my float, what type of data it is. All right, so in order to do that, we got handy methods in JavaScript, built-in functions like typeof. So we can do a type of my int, and it returns the value back as it's a number. Okay, that's good. So typeof my float. As you can see, both return back that they are numbers. For us, it's a very, very good thing. Now, just imagine if integers gives you a different data type back than floats do. But then you have to work with a different type of data type with floats, and it's just going to get messed up. But for us, luckily, they all are a data type of number. All right, which brings us to our next topic. Basically, the number object is an instance of which represents all standard numbers that you will use in JavaScript. And there's a number of useful methods available on it for you to manipulate your numbers that you're going to work with. All right, so let's use an example. Now, this is a price that got returned, but we don't want it to be that long number. We just want it to be 6.95. How do we do that? All right, let's say we create a new variable called price. Let's just call it my price. Or let's say new price. Okay, so basically what we do now is we want to work on the number object with the price that we have there. In order to do that, we're going to say my float. All right, and it already bring us a couple of methods on that. So the first one that we're obviously showing there is toFixed. That is if we want to change it to decimal places. The other one is to local string, to precision, and to string, obviously. Right, so we're just going to use the toFixed. Now for us, what we want to do is, as you can see, it kind of gives you a nice little W points there. So the thing is, you can have it from 0 to 20, obviously, and you want it to fix, but we want it to be 2 decimal places. All right, so let's just do this, and let's see what the new price will give us back. New price. All right, as you can see, the new price returns the value of 6.95. Right, so as you can see, it returns that value. But now you might look at this and you might say, this doesn't look like a number. Because you remember the other numbers, they returned green before. All right, so let's see type of new price. And you're correct if you notice that. You will see it returns back a value of a string. So now you might think, but I don't want it to be a string. I want it to be a number. Is there a way to change it to a number? Yes, there's a way to change it to a number. So let's see. Right, so how do we do that? Now let's create, for argument's sake, let's create a new one. We call it numPrice. Right, equal that to number. Right, so that's our object. And then we're going to just call it new price. So obviously the variable that we have on top of there. Right, I just kind of want to break it down easy for you guys like this. Okay, so let's just start there. So let's go into our browser and we're just going to do new price. As you can see, and we can just do type of price. All right, so as you can see, it returns the value of a number. Now, why would we want to change it from a string to a number? Because let me give you an example. Let's take, for instance. Now, sometimes you might end up with a number that is stored as a string type, which makes it very difficult to perform calculations with it. The way we solve this problem is by passing the string value in the number that we have right there. Number, basically this is called the number constructor, to return a number version of the same value. Now let's say we didn't do this. Let's say we didn't change it to that. Now let's make an example. So let the sum equal to my integer, right, plus new price. New price. Right. So basically the sum is basically, let me just do it like this. The sum is equal to 10 plus 6.95. This is actually what we want to do. So it will basically be 16.95. But let's see what it really brings us back in the browser. So if we go to sum, as you can see, it returns a string value of 106.95. So basically, when you calculate a string with a number, it actually will return a string value. And basically what it does, it will just add the two. Just bring them together. Now, this is not what we're looking for. Because, as you know, it is supposed to return the value for us of 16.95, not 106.95. All right? So, in order to fix that, we actually converted that string to a number. Now, let's say instead of the new price, we call it the num price. Now, if we enter, and we go back to our browser and we refresh it, I'm just going to call the sum. Right, I just made quickly a new calculation. Basically, I just call it new sum. Basically, the num price, which is this one right there, as you can see, it highlights this one, and the new int. As you remember, it returned the value of 106. Let's see what it returns for us now. New sum. As you can see, it returns the correct value. Why? Because it's calculating a number with a number. Right? A number that's calculated with a string will return a string value. All right. So let's go on to our next part. All right. So that is very, very cool and very handy to know if you guys you're going to work with a lot of numbers and you want to basically remember these type of things. There's obviously more methods on our number object that we can use and stuff like that, but we're not going to get to in all of them. They're quite easily available if you Google numbers object and methods, then you will get them. All right. Now, our next object in the numbers part is called, let me just comment this out so that you guys can see them and have them before you. It's called It's called arithmetic operators. Now, you might thinking, arithmetic sounds very familiar. Yes, it's very familiar because it's all the things that we learned in school. But in JavaScript, there's some things that just works a little bit different, but I want to show you them all. All right, the first one that we got, let me just make a comment. Just like this, I think this will work a little bit better for us. All right, the first one that we have is called the plus one, but we call that addition. Right? This will be a bit of a problem. Let me do it like work as well, but let me do it like this. The plus is called the addition. It adds two numbers together. That's quite easy. So 2 plus 4, that's quite easy to know, and it is 6. The next one that we called is called the subtraction. Okay, that is 4 minus 2 equals 2. Maybe I must leave a couple of mistakes for you guys in there so that you guys can see. The next one is called multiplication. Okay. Let me type them all out quickly. Right. So the first one is we've got addition, subtraction, that we all know. Multiplication, 2 times 2 is equal to 4. Division. Right, now, the thing with division, you must always remember, the left number, it divides the left number from the right. Basically, the left number from the right. Okay? Just remember that. The remainder is the next one. Returns the remainder left after you divide the left number into the number of integer portions equal to the right number. So if you think of how many times 5 goes into 12, you see it will go in there twice, which is 10. The remainder, it is 2. Okay, easy peasy. Right, so let's use another example. If we do 8 and 3, basically what will happen is 3 goes there in twice. The remainder of that is 2, which because it's 6 minus 8 is 2. The next one is exponent. It's got two multiplication symbols right there, and raises basically the base number to the exponent, power, that is the number multiplied by itself, and the exponent times. Okay, so basically 6 times 6 gives us 36. Okay, so basically we put in there 3 is 6 times 6 times 6. Right, so let's leave it like that. Okay, so 36. Right, brings us to our next topic. So you guys, that is kind of just very basic stuff, so I don't want to go too in depth with that, or can I really? I think I can, but the next one that we hold is operator precedence. Now this is also the stuff that we learned in school. This is very important to know. Now basically operator precedence in JavaScript is the same as we get taught in school. Multiplication and division are always done first, then addition and subtraction. Calculations always happen from the left to the right. Okay, so let's use an example. We got 20. The reason why I'm using comments is because I don't want to get an error in my browser, so let me just use it inside this comment. Let's say we have 20 plus 45 divided by 8 plus 2. All right, so you're going to think, all right, I'm going to do 20 plus 45, then I'm going to divide it by 8, then I'm going to add 2. Nope, that will give you the wrong answer. The precedent meaning multiplication and division is first, so basically you're going to divide the 45 by 8, then you're going to add the 20, and then you're going to add the 2. But now, in order to override this precedent, what you have to do, let me just change this to 40. Let's make it simpler because we can do this. Okay, so in order to override let's say you wanted this to be calculated first. In order to do that, you can wrap them up in parentheses. So how do we do that? So let's create a new comment. This is just for me, so that you guys can obviously have this as a tools, as a reference to use. So I'm just going to use 20 plus 32, but then I'm going to divide that by 8 plus 2. All right, so in order to do that, you just wrap them with parentheses. Okay, so you must know operation precedence work like this. Multiplication and divisions come first, always done first, then additions and subtractions. And calculations are done from left, from this side to the right side. Okay. In order, if you want things to happen, to override that from happening, you put parentheses on the things you want to be calculated together. Okay. Right. So that brings us to our next topic. All right. I just quickly typed in this for you guys, so if you can pause the video, so if you can remember this multiplication divisions. Okay. First, after Okay, and to override use parentheses. Okay, the next part that we got is called increment operators and decrement operators. Let me just use this. Another comment there. So what is increment and decrement operators? Sometimes you will want to add or subtract one, to, or from numeric variable value. This can be conveniently done with the increment or a decrement operator. Now, what is an increment operator? All right, that is basically a plus, and let me just call this increment And the next one that we're going to have is decrement. You're going to see this quite a lot in your JavaScript career or your coding career, right? Increment and decrement. All right, the do's and the don'ts. All right, you cannot, let me just do this. You cannot do this. Let's say we got a number 6 and then we want to add to it 6 plus plus. That won't work. You can only increment on an existing value. So in order to do that, we can just say let my number, just make sure all the others are, yep, they commented out so they won't give us an error. Let my number equal to 6. Okay. All right. So what can we do? We can just say my num plus plus. So what does that mean? Okay. All right. Now let's see what happens in the browser if we called my num. As you can see, it returns the value of 7. So basically incremented our value of 6 by 1. So it means it add 1 to it. All right. So let's say if we decrement it by minus minus. All right. So let's see what happens now. All right. Let's go to our browser and type in my num. As you can see, it reduced the value of 1. So basically 6 minus 1. What will happen if we do it, let's say 3 times? Okay, so what do you think the number is going to be? Let's see. So my num, as you can see, it decremented this one with, so it will be 5, that will be 4, this will be 3. Quite handy, neat. And we can do the same thing if we add the plus plus there. So plus plus, it will do it. So my num will be 7 basically. But what if we do this? Add 4 there. So let's create my num again. Refresh the browser. Clear this. Oh no, I didn't save it here. So let's save it. Go to my num. As you can see, it incremented 4 times. Very, very handy. Note, you can make the browser do it the other way around. We can add the plus plus in the beginning, or the increment in the beginning, or the decrement in the beginning. So let's quickly do that. All right, so I added the plus plus there, and just go back and see the my num, and it turns the value of 7. All right. The next part that we're going to do is that's enough with the increment and decrement operators. We're going to use them quite a lot in the coming episodes. So remember they're there. All right. The next one that we're going to have is called assignment. All right. We already used them quite a bit. Assignment operators that assign a specific value to a variable. We already used a couple of basic ones. It's called the, let me just do this. Comment again. It is basically our lovely equal sign. And as you remember, this right here, when we declared the variable, initialized it, we used the equal sign. So basically, that's our basic assignment operator we have. All right. But there is a number of other ones that we don't know yet. Okay. So, but they are more complex types which provide useful shortcuts to keep your code neat and more efficient. Okay. So let's get into the first one. The first one that we have. Right, so this is the basic one. Let me just make a comment there. The reason why I'm doing this is so that you guys can pause it and maybe take notes for yourselves. Okay. This is our basic assignment operator. Let me just operator. Okay. The first one we have is called the plus and the equal. Now this is called the addition assignment. Okay, if I can spell. All right. Now, very careful. Now, it adds the value on the right to the variable on the left, then returns the new variable value. Okay, so let's make an example. So basically, x plus, now let's just, instead of, I think sometimes, yeah, let's just call it my num, because I know there's a couple of people that hate math and they don't understand it, but let me just, let's use my num plus equals 4. You might look at that and be like, what is this? Basically, what this does is, let me just put a comma there for you guys. It is actually, all it does is saying my num is equal to my num plus 4. That's all it does. It's just a nice shortcut code for doing the same thing like this, then this. Basically, it says the value on the right, so basically this value on the right of the variable adds the value on the right of the variable to the left one, then returns a new variable. So basically, we'll return the new minor. Right? Very, very cool. So for those people that are math gurus, basically it's x plus equals to 4. It's the same as saying x is equal to x plus 4. It's the same thing. All right. I'm just using the my num variable because you're going to deal with more or less that kind of thing when you're doing your coding. All right. So I'm just going to use my num as an example. All right. So the next one that we have is called negative equals to operator, and that is called the subtraction assignment. Quite easy names to remember. Now, subtraction, what it does, it will subtract the value on the right from the variable value on the left, then returns a new variable. So an example, let me just do this. All right, so an example of that so that you guys can maybe just copy it for yourself. Right, so example, next one is my num, negative equals to 6. It is the same as my num equal to my num minus 6. It does the same thing as that. All right. So if you guys want to, I'm just doing this so that you guys can know what it is there for. All right. So the next one that we got is called the multiplication assignment. So number 3, some space there. It's the multiplication, so it's double that multiplication equals, that is called the multiplication assignment, and I'm just going to make an example. Example, that would be my num, it's times equals to, say, 5, okay, then my num is equal to my num multiplied by 5. It's the same thing. It's just a nicer way to write it. So if you're going to see this in someone else's code, then you will know what is happening. Right. The next one that we got is called the division operator. So it's divide equals to division assignment. Okay. And then we have an example. Okay, that is my num. I'm just going to copy this so that I don't waste your guys' time. So divided and divide. I'm going to use something else here, 8 and 8. Okay, very, very easy. But now I want to explain what happens now. In the division, the variable value on the left divides the variable value on the left by the value on the right, and returns a new variable. All right, brings us to our next one. So that is our basic assignment operators that we have: the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So we're going to use them quite a lot going forward in our assignments or little projects that we're going to do, so that you can kind of get used to them. I think this might just be a lot of information to take in, but bear with us. Watch it a couple of times. If it still gets confusing, and leave a comment for us, for me, and I will comment back or give you some explanations or examples or some other material that you maybe can read more about them. All right, which brings us to our last topic for the day. So this one will be called comparison operators. All right, so let's quickly do that. You're going to use this a lot of times in JavaScript or in coding in general. Comparison operators. Right. So the first thing that we have, let me just do this. So that's how we make a multi-line comment. Right. So the first thing that we're doing now, sometimes we want to run a true or false test. All right, sorry about that, guys. All right, the next one that we're going to discuss, I don't know, is called comparison operators. Now, sometimes we will want to run true or false test, then act accordingly depending on the result of that test. All right, so you're going to use this quite a lot in your developing or programming career. So the first one is called a triple equal sign. Now this is called strict equality. All right, so this is basically what this does is it tests whether the left and the right values are identical to one another, including the data type. So for example, all right, let's say we have 5 is triple equals to, let's actually test it in the browser first. So let's say let new test, I'm just going to call it new test, equals to 5 is that triple equal to 5? Now, as you can see, it returns the value of true, right? But what if we put this to because this is now a number. Now, what if we turn it to a string? It can be single quotes or double quotes, remember, but let me just do single quotes. All right, so if I do this again, new test, you can see it returns false, all right, because it's testing for the data type and the value, not just the value only. But double equals doesn't care about the data type. It only checks for the value. So let's see if it returns. All right. So as you can see, it returns true. Why? because 5 is equal to 5, but it's not the same data type. It only checks for the value. But triple equals will give you a false because it's checking for both. It checks for the value and it checks for the data type. So if this is a number, it will want to make sure that this is a number as well. All right, so that is called strict equality. All right, so let me copy this for example. Let me just call it example. Paste it in there so that we can have it. All right, the next one that we have is strict non-equality. Okay, so that is called with exclamation mark and double equal sign. Strict, I call this strict T. Strict non-equality. Okay, so in this case, what will happen now is if we do this new test, okay, is it not equal to 5? Okay, so what it does is basically it tests whether the left and the right are not identical to one another. All right, so let's go to new test, and it will return false, meaning they are identical to one another because it tests if they are not identical. So if we put the 4 in there, refresh, new test, it will return the value of true because it's saying, nope, the 5 and the 4 are not identical in data type and in value. But what if I do this? 5, but instead of that, we make it a string. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, new test. And it will return true because it's testing if the 5 is not identical to the 5, meaning it's testing for the value and data type. I'm just hammering these kind of points so that you guys can remember them. All right, so it's saying the 5 is not equal to the 5. The values are the same, but the data types are not the same. Okay, so what if I remove that? All right, so now we're not checking for the data type, we're only checking for the value. So what do you think is going to happen? Let's go. It's saying true, meaning they are not equal to each other, not identical. All right, so remember that triple equals, double equals with the exclamation mark, return the same one, it will return the same. So let me just do this with a single. Let me save it here. Test. It returns false. Okay, as you guys can see right there. Because it's saying that these two are identical. But when I put it double equals, it will say, it's supposed to say they are not identical. All right. So remember the triple equals, check for the data type and the value. The double equals doesn't do that. So as far as possible, use the strict equality method. Okay, let me just copy that example. Almost done, guys. Almost done. Right. So let me delete this one. Right. So the next one that we have is called the less than. So this is the less than. So with the less than, it tests whether the left value is smaller than the right value. Okay, so let's use an example. So basically, let me just use the new test. Equals to, let's say, 4 is less than 2. Okay, so let's quickly copy this and just paste it at the bottom. So basically, if we type in new test, it's supposed to return false. But if we do 1 is less than 2, it's supposed to give us a true value because 1 is less than 2. Right, let me copy this down again. And then we have the greater than is the same as less than. No, it's not the same, but it works more or less the same because it tests where if the left is greater than the right. Right, so if I change this to greater than, new test, it's supposed to return false, but if we type in 5, it supposed to return true. Let me just refresh. Say new test. Yep, it returns the value of true. Okay, so let's change this to 4. Right, now the next one that we have is we only got 2 more. Let me quickly type them out. All right, the 2 are called less than or equal to. So an example, let's just copy this. Now let's just go less than or equal to. It's 5 less than or equal to 2. It tests for both of those are true. So let's see if new test. So we all know that that will be false, right? So let's say if this is 1, all right? So let's say new test, it will return the value of true. But if we say it's 2, let's see what happens now again. But because we know 2 is not less than 2, but we know that 2 is equal to 2. So it returns true. So basically what it does, it tests whether it's less than or if it's equal to. In either of those 2 circumstances, it will turn true. So if we say greater than, right, so new test, is 2 greater than 2 or equal to 2, it will return true. And if we say 1, new, it will return the value of false. Why? Because 1 is not greater than or equal to 2. But if we change this to 4, new test, as you can see, it returns the value of true because 4 is greater than 2, but it's not equal to 2. So check both if it's greater or if it's equal. All right, that brings us to an end of this lesson. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate you guys being here. And if you stick it through till here, congratulations. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one where we will be discussing some more things about JavaScript. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. One last thing, if you guys have any comments or questions or anything, please leave them in the comment section. Give the video a like if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, and some constructive feedback. It's always helpful. Thank you guys. Goodbye.